The night is ending, and the first rays of sunlight are dawning and appearing on the horizon as Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb. There she makes her way forward with her heart overwhelmed with grief at the death that took place. Her beloved was gone, he was dead. Yet upon arriving and seeing the empty tomb, she turns around and she retraces her footsteps. She leaves the tomb behind and runs to the disciples to proclaim a change of course. Jesus is risen and awaits them in Galilee. In their lives, she experienced Easter as a passage. That's why we often refer to Easter as a Pasch, or sometimes we refer to the Paschal mystery. It simply means a passage. They passed from walking sorrowfully towards a tomb to running back with joy to the disciples to tell them not only that the Lord is risen, but also that they are to set out immediately to reach a destination, Galilee. There they will meet the risen Lord, the rebirth of the disciples. The resurrection of their hearts passes through Galilee. My brothers and sisters, let us join them in this journey. Let us go with them to Galilee. While I was doing studies at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., I often would stop by a neighboring cemetery. I would regularly notice small little stones were left upon the gravestones. This was probably an ancient tradition that had been passed on from centuries, and it was simply meant to inform the person, the loved one who had died, that someone was there that day to visit them. I remember on Easter Sunday, I also went to go to the cemetery. And there, as I was looking at one tomb, I was startled to notice on another tomb a stone, a single stone on that tomb. And I couldn't help but think about the larger one removed from the tomb of Jesus, that first resurrection morning. In going to grave sites, we may find ourselves plunged into memories of our loved ones too. Yet these are only memories. And the problem is that we get back into our car and we drive away with the seat next to us empty. Our loved one doesn't accompany us back home. At times, we too simply feel weary about our daily routine, tired of talking, tired of taking risk in a cold, hard world where it seems the clever and the strong seem to be getting ahead. At other times, we feel helpless. We feel discouraged before the power of evil, the conflicts that tear apart relationships, those cancers of corruption, the destruction of war that's taking place in our world, and it weighs us down. We too may have come face to face with death because it robbed us of the presence of our loved ones, or because maybe even we brushed up against an illness or ourselves are seriously ill, and we tend to fall back. It's then easy to yield to discouragement. Once that wellspring of hope inside of us has died, has gone away, what's left? Where do we turn? Where do we go? And these are similar situations. Each of us knows our own plight. Our plot comes to a halt before a row of tombs, We stand there and we're filled with sorrow and regret. We're alone, we're powerless, and we're repeating the question, why? Why did our loved one have to die? Why did they have to leave this earth? Why? That momentous reality of the first resurrection, however, was indescribably different. This then is what the resurrection of the Lord accomplishes. It motivates us to move forward, to leave behind our sense of defeat, to roll away those stones of the tombs in which we often imprison our hope, and to look with confidence to the future, where Christ is risen. He's changed the direction of history. Yet to do this, the resurrection of our Lord takes us back to the grace of our own past. It brings us back to Galilee, where the story of Jesus began, where the first call took place. Do you remember your first encounter with Christ? Do you remember maybe that day when you were baptized? And that grace of God was poured into your hearts and into your souls? Do you recall maybe your first communion and the joy you had knowing that you had received or were going to receive the risen Christ? My brothers and sisters, it's time to turn back to that joy once again. In other words, it asks us to relieve that moment, that situation, that experience in which we met the Lord, when we experienced his love and received a radiantly new way of seeing ourselves, the world around us, and the mystery of life itself. Brothers and sisters, to rise again, to start anew, to take up our journey. We always need to return to Galilee, that is, to go back, not to some kind of an abstract idea of who Jesus was, but to remember the living, concrete, and profound memory of our first encounter with him. That's what Easter is all about, reawakening that joy that we once experienced. Yes, to go forward, we sometimes need to go back to remember, to have hope. We need to relive that memory. This is what we're asked to do, to remember and to go forward. If you recover that first love, that wonder, that joy of your encounter with God, you will keep advancing, despite what the world tends to want to hold us down. Look for that hope. Look for that joy. My brothers and sisters, let's relive the resurrection of Christ until we finally reach our homeland in heaven with God forever. Happy Easter to you all as we return to Galilee to encounter the living Christ.